Hello, this is Mohammed. I'm back with the part 6 of the continuous tutorial about building the employee vaccination management system. So last time we created the database and we also created the object relational mapping for vaccine type, which is this file right here, using the Hibernate reverse engineering. So today what we're going to do is, first of all, the next step is to test to make sure that the ORM that we generated is working correctly. And also, once that we find out our test case is working properly, then we will go back to our code and hook our application up with the database using this Hibernate object relational mapping. Let's get started. You should have something like this if you have been following the tutorial, and I've also kept the code in the GitHub. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a toString method right here. So right click and then go to source and say generate toString and select all defaults and just say generate. So I'll generate this toString method. So whenever we use this object in system.println, we can actually see exactly all the list of values in there. Well, the next thing we're going to do is we don't constantly want to set the date, because the date happens to be a mandatory field. You can't have it null. So Hibernate actually provides us a nice way to just say that, hey, I'm not going to provide this to you, but I'm going to tell you what that is, and just go ahead do this for me. So that there's an annotation called creation timestamp. And we need to put that exactly here, and of course you can import it. If I put my mouse over there, it gives me this hint. Just at the top of the get created date method. And similarly, we don't want to update the time all the time during the last updated date. So similarly, we're just going to put something called update timestamp. Timestamps should be small cases. Okay, there you go. So what that tells Hibernate is, say, whenever you're trying to update this record, make sure you automatically update this field as well, or set this up with the timestamp. Whenever you're creating this record, also automatically add this. Okay, so now that's done, let's go ahead and do the next step. The next step is we need to tell the Spring or Spring Boot that what is my database. So go to the application.properties file, and you could do it through here by adding, or you could go through the source. I like to go through the source straight, and here we are going to add 3 properties to basically tell Spring Boot that, hey, we got a database. So the first one is, of course, spring.datasource.URL is one of them, and of course the URL is nothing but JDBC. It's the same URL that we used, and it would be MySQL and then ://localhost is the server name, is 3306 is the default port, and our database is evms. And then the next thing, it's going to be spring.datasource.username would be, of course, evms, and the last one is going to be the password, of course, which is in my case is this, and you put your password, whatever you used when you installed the evms user, or created the user rather. Okay, so once this is done, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go try to create a repository, which basically says I'm going to use this repository to connect to my object relational mapping, which connects to the database. So at this point, we really don't need to be on a Hibernate perspective. You can be if you want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and change it to JEE perspective, which is, so right now I'm on Hibernate. I'm going to go ahead and change it to JEE perspective. And it gives me the JEE perspective, and of course I'm going to go to my Java, highlight that, right click, and so I'm going to create a new class file. Actually, not a new class file. I'm going to go ahead and create a new interface that is going to be in the package of not exactly that, so it's going to be that dot repository. I like to keep all of my repositories in the repository package, and the name would be called vaccine type repository, of course, and click on finish. And there's my empty repository. It's not doing anything yet. What we're going to do is we're going to extend that from the GPay repository that the GPay gives us. And you can put your mouse over here and import it. Okay. Alright. Now one thing we need to specify in GPay repository that will automatically help us with a lot of things, which is what is the ORM that I'm trying to load with this repository, and what is the primary key of that of that ORM. So in our case, it would be vaccine type is the ORM, and this is like a generic template, and our primary key is a string type because the primary key is the name of the vaccine type. Let's go import it because we already have that ORM created, the vaccine type, and that's all we need for the repository. So now we're going to test the repository to see if it can get the data from our actual table. By the way, just a quick reminder, if you go back here, vaccine type table, if you just select rows, this is Microsoft SQL Workbench which we installed, you will see there's 3 rows. So we should be able to read this data at least. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create a test case. So we already have this thing. If we expand source test Java, there's a test file already kind of created, Java file. So we're going to utilize that. Of course, I'm going to change that name to say test repository. And the first thing we need is a reference to our repository, which is, I'm going to say auto-wired, and we need the name of a repository which we call the vaccine type repository. Oops, and of course the name of the variable would be similar with a smaller case. That. And then let's go ahead and try to import these. Import that, and then import these. There we go. Okay, now that we have the repository, let's quickly check one thing. Is in the repository we should be able to fetch the data, because we already told our repository what type of ORM we have. And it's pretty simple actually. The way you do it is you just a repository dot, they have built-in methods because we extended from the interface JPay repository. The thing we're looking for is, we're going to use some of this, but right now we're looking for the find all method. So it basically says it's going to give us everything, which is nothing but a list of all the vaccine type. That's what it's supposed to give me. Go ahead and import that. Java util. I'm just going to say list. Let's import that. Okay, so now we get the list, and then what we're going to do is let's run through a quick loop for, let's say it's going to be a vaccine type that we're going to get for each of the entries. So it would be this, and get it out of the list. And once we read each of them, let's go ahead and just try to do a system out print line. Okay, vaccine type. Let's see if that works. So basically we're just getting everything out of the database and we're basically printing it out. Right. Now one more thing I could just put just to kind of say that this is what we're trying to do is showing all list of vaccine types, something like that, dot dot dot. And we can put another empty line before that, an empty line after the list, so that we know this is our list that is showing up. Now this is a JUnit test case, so Eclipse provides us a nice way to run this thing by just doing this. You can just right click right here and just say run as. It's a JUnit test, it automatically knows this is JUnit. Go click on that. And there you go. It looks like it is reading it. If you look at this, showing a list of vaccines in the system or print line. If you remember, we added a toString method of one vaccine type, so it's showing exactly all the data that it read. COVID-19, there's a description, there's a created date, by, name, all that. So it looks like it's working. So we got a good URM that we could use. All right, now let's add a little bit more testing. So we would learn how to actually add and delete and change the data through this Hibernate. So this is good. Let's go ahead and put this piece of code. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and cut this and create another method because we may need to look at this list multiple times. So I'm going to create a method called private show vaccine types. Okay, so here I'm just going to put that code in there, and we're just going to reuse this. So let's put a void in here. So anytime we wanted to just show the data to see, what's in there, and then we can just call this method. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is, of course, from this test repository, show all the vaccine types. Good. And the next thing we're going to do is let's try to add a new one. So vaccine type. Vaccine type is the variable is equal to, let's create a new one, this. And then let's put some data in there. So let's say that set name would be, let's do something like a polio vaccine maybe. And then let's add a description. So set description. I'll put a little bit more information like polio. This may need one vaccine or something like that. Okay. Now, if you recall, there's other data columns like created by, last updated by, and of course we don't have to put the created and the last updated because we took care of that in the vaccine type using the creation timestamp and update. But we still need to put the created by, like who is adding the data, and also last updated by. So we're going to add those two. So otherwise we're going to get an error saying that you are not putting the required data. So let's set created by, put my name, and copy that pretty much, and it would be last updated by me. Okay. And then all you have to do is the repository can save this data. Repository.save. And what we're saving is a vaccine type. So this line of code is supposed to create the row. So once we create the row, then we can actually call the vaccine types again, just to see if that showed up correctly, okay, just for our testing purpose. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get a reference of that row. so we don't need to redeclare it. What we're going to do is, the way you would get that is using another method. So we're basically testing all the methods of the repository: create, retrieve, update, and delete. So we're going to go ahead and say dot find. There's a method called find by ID. There you go. And our ID is, this is the primary key, so we're going to try to find, that's exactly this one that we just added, should be there. And then you also have to call .get to get actually the object, vaccine type object, or the ORM object. And then let's say we're just going to go ahead and change .set description to something like, well, it's not really one, maybe it needs, this may need unknown amount of vaccine or something like that. Anyway, just a sample data. Okay, and then if you call this exact save again, this time it should just update, do an update, not necessarily an insert of a new data. Alright, so once that's done, then we want it to check again. And then, when that's done, then let's go and try to delete it. The way you delete it is pretty simple. You just kind of, instead of calling a save, you would just call there's a delete method. Just call that delete and just put exactly that reference and it would delete it. Now another nice thing that may help us is, let's just start putting something like anytime we try to show this, let's just add a custom message. And this is the message we're going to try to show. And let's start sending this. So here, the first time, of course, we wanted to showing all the list of vaccine types, and then this one we wanted to say that showing after adding a new, showing all list of vaccine types. That's fine, and we are showing it again here. So this one would be saying something like, after updating the data, showing all list of vaccine types, and then right after the delete, we want to make sure that we are back on the same place. So they should be losing that whatever we added. After deleting the data showing select type. So let's see how that looks. Now one thing we could do is, it's probably going to start with an empty line and keep adding, instead of keep adding double empty lines, let's just get rid of that one. And let's just add one all the way at the end right here. It's probably the best thing. Alright, let's see how it looks. So what's going to happen is, it should first show all the list of vaccine, then, which is right here, then we are adding one, which is right here, and then show we, after the adding, how it looks, and then we're updating that vaccine we just added, and then it will show after updating how it looks, and if it got updated, especially this description. And then we're deleting whatever we added, and then it's going to show how it looks after deleting. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and clear this up right here, and then let's go ahead and rerun this thing. Just run as JUnit test case. Stretch it up a little bit. Actually, double click on to get the whole screenshot of this. Alright, looks like it has worked. So first, it started with three data. As you can see, COVID-19, Ebola, and flu, all of those are good, and this is the entire list of information. And then after adding, as you can see, we added a new data, which is this guy right here. And this is the data we had this minute, one vaccine, blah, 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 blah. Then after updating, it should say this. So the description has changed right there. So as you can see, it did change. So we're showing that list. And then after we're deleting, we're back to square one, whatever three we had, and that's what we got. And we can verify that by going to our database right here. Let's just rerun this. And yeah, we got only three data. So great. So our test went okay. So that's how you would, again, it's just a very small test case, I mean. And then, but you could literally use this knowledge to write anything that you want for any amount of test cases. So now that's my practice that I follow, is after knowing that, okay, I can pretty much do create, retrieve, update, delete on this object relational mapping, then let's get to coding. So the next step would be to, let's get back to our actual page, which is right here. And this page was followed by this controller. So let's go to the controller. So in the controller, everything is hard coded now. So we're going to get rid of all this hard coding. Done deal. No need this hard coding. All right. So we don't need the hard coding. Then how are you going to get the data? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and auto wire, just the way we did in the test case. So we're going to say auto wire vaccine type repository. All right, let's go ahead, import that, of course, and import the repository as well. And then this is nothing but becomes calling the right method, which is here we wanted to get everything. So we call dot, if you remember the method find all, and that returns a list of vaccine types. So this one we're going to call that not vaccine type map anymore, just call it vaccine type list to be consistent. Alright, so now that is what we're passing to the index page. So let's go back to the index page now. So in the index page, if you recall, this is the loop where we are kind of loading each of the rows of data. So first of all, this is not vaccine map anymore. This is going to be vaccine type list. And we're not getting any key. Let's just get a reference to the actual vaccine type object, call it V. And we're not getting key anymore, so this would be v.name. That would be one of the member variables of the vaccine type, and this would be the description. So that would be v.description, and that should be it. Let's go ahead and save it. Now we should be getting the data from the database. So let's go ahead and run this. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this, right click, and run as Java application, because you will notice that it's actually loading the Hibernate information, and then it's up. Let's go back, open a tab, http://localhost, enter. Nice, nothing has changed. Now this information is being retrieved from the database. Okay, there is no hard code that's going on. It's coming straight from database. Okay, great. So I will stop today on this one, and the next time what we're going to do is in part 7 we will complete this module by adding an add, an edit, and a delete, and make that working against the database. So hope to see you next time, and I'm also going to put the code in the GitHub. Also, please look for the link in the down description below. Thanks for watching.